Are we good, YouTube? Hello, everybody. Recording live from somewhere. This is Zach Couples with episode number 36 of the Movement Debrief. And you guys aren't even ready for the topics today. You're so not ready, I might just go through all my services first before I deliver. I'll make the exception today. We're going to talk about PTAs. What does it take to be a good PTA? How should the PT-PTA relationship work? All other things along those lines. We're going to talk about SI joint fusion, in a specific case from one of my former colleagues. We'll work through that. And last but not least, we're going to talk about daily routines. Ones that I use, why they're important in my life, and why they ought to be important in yours if you want to get shit done. But before we do that, a little bit of housekeeping. Did you guys see my blog this last week? So on Monday, it was the typical but always awesome links and review section of the month of January, and found a lot of good ones, a lot of dope links this past month. Learned a lot of good things, a lot of great lessons. It was a little bit less rehabby and training and a little bit more on the health and wellness side of things. And maybe that's because that's what's tripping my trigger. And maybe that's because that's what's just been good. Patty, how you doing, homegirl? So that was this week's post. What else we got going on housekeeping-wise? Of course, guys. September 15th to 16th in good old Seattle, Washington, hosted by my boy Michael Lee. Brought to you 2-day seminar by yours truly, The Human Matrix, the code to unlocking maximal health and performance. You guys should be there. I've been brainstorming a lot of different things, been experimenting with some different things in the clinic, and I'm going to talk about it there. I'll probably talk about some things before that, but definitely going to talk about it there. So you guys should check it out, sign up. I'm hoping to give Dr. Michael Lee my little write-up doodad hopefully this week so we can start doing some pre-signing stuff, guys, because stuff's going to fill up quick. Be there, because it's hip to be square. Otherwise, Reflections Internal is still not... I haven't done crap for my product. It's coming out, though. Actually, this weekend, I'm going to make a good dent on it, I've decided. So I just got to prep up a few blogs over the next few weeks. And, I got some things going on. And I'm hoping, though, I can make a dent, and then I can give you guys a little bit more clarity about what I'm actually going to do with this darn thing. So stay tuned. Stay posted. I promise I will let you guys know ASAP about more details regarding the product and what I decide I'm going to do with it. So thank you for your patience. Otherwise, that's really all I got going on in life. It was a working weekend. I took my California law exam, so fingers crossed that I did okay with that. And we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll be in California on my next assignment. It's not really an assignment. It's wherever the hell I want to go. California is one of those states. It's one of my three. I'm thinking, if I ever decide to develop a final resting place, that it will either be San Diego, California, Las Vegas, Nevada, or Phoenix, Arizona. Maybe if Dave Rasco's lucky, I'll do Austin, Texas. But it's a distant fourth. Because I like sun, I like desert, and I love the West. West is the best, in my opinion. West Side. But that's just me. So that's pretty much my life. I hope your guys' life is going well and you're having an outstanding first week of February. My, does this time fly. But you know what doesn't fly? These movement debriefs. So let's really dive in today, shall we? First question comes from somewhere. There we go. This is two people's asked me about this. So we got John Murray 64 and my girl Yanni Poo Proctor. We're talking about PTAs. So let's first go with John Murray's portion of the question. How's about advice for PTAs going out on clinicals / into the field in general? What are the traits that make the best ones? Thanks, dude. John Murray 64 from Twitter. That's a phenomenal question. And here's my thought on PTAs. And what I would say to your question is this. If you are a PTA going into the clinical or into the field, get so damn good that you supersede being a PTA. Because I think it's unfortunate that because of the less education that they go through and the nature and the extent of the PT-PTA relationship in the system, that a lot of times PTAs are frowned upon. And I think that's very, very sad, because I know a lot of very good PTAs. Michael Mullen is a phenomenal example. I mean, you know, if I was referring someone in Maine, like, Michael Mullen would be my guy. But the problem is, because of the system, that he has to, there's hurdles that have to be overcome in order to get to him. And I really think you can't let that, the PTA degree, license, and all that keep you down. Not that I don't think it would, but you have to treat yourself as you would any other clinician, and that means learning as much as you can, spending time getting better at your craft, working with a lot of patients, developing good rapport and relationships with the PTA, looking for a PTA that you trust and you want to work with. Because when I'm working with a PTA, I want to think of them more as peers, not just as an assistant. And a lot of times, because PTAs will be working with, in certain settings, will be working with the patients a lot more than the physical therapists, well, they see them more often. They need to respond effectively to change. And even though you're not performing an evaluation, the first evaluation, like a physical therapist is, you're still doing assessments, or at least you ought to be assessing something day in and day out, and making appropriate changes pending the circumstances. And I think if you can elevate yourself to the highest degree possible as a clinician, period, regardless of what your discipline is, you're going to be good. And it's that drive, it's that passion, it's that willingness to collaborate with your PT that's really going to make you successful. And if you could get on the same page with that PT, that's going to make both of you successful. And most importantly, it's going to make your clients successful. Hang on. Joey Monotoni, what are your thoughts on setting up the educational realm of PT, how the nursing model? I will answer your question, Joey, but I need you to expand upon that, because I'm not sure what you mean. I'm not super familiar with the nursing model. So that's what I would say about PTAs. Like, you just have to be good at what you do, and working with a like-minded clinician helps. I've had some experiences in my, okay, I got you. Sorry, Joey's asking an interesting question about the RN. Oh, I got what you're saying. Okay. Joey Monotoni on Instagram actually made a good point. So he's talking about, instead of setting up having like a PT and a PTA, having like an RN, BSN, MSN model. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how that would work in this case, because, yeah, I don't know. That's a really good question, because it will advance through the scope of practice-wise. That's okay. Now that's a good point right there, Joey, because I think it's very hard for a PTA to transition to a PT. Like, there's not a smooth boom, boom, boom. Though what would be kind of cool is if that was a portion of the, like, maybe you have stopping points along the way. Like, if you're a PT, maybe you go through like a PTA education first, then you can practice and then finish some of the schooling pieces that you need to do in order to be a PT. I mean, I don't know. It's something to definitely consider, because I think it's unfortunate with that there's somewhat of a divide between the therapist and the assistant, because really, if you want a good continuum of care, they both have to have pretty high skill sets. And a lot of times with the laws in various states, PTAs aren't allowed to do certain things, versus other states they are, and it's kind of messy. And I don't think it has to be that way. I'm kind of put off by licenses anyways, because there's a lot of people who don't have a PT degree that I would feel very comfortable sending to for whether they're in pain, or some people who maybe aren't RDs that I would feel very comfortable doing a nutrition referral to. And I think that's just, I think the licensure system is highly unfortunate. And my hope is that regardless of what your letters are after your name, that you transcend your license at some point. You can offer a lot more than just whatever the stereotypical PT or MD or whatever you are is. I think we have to really have a broad skill set in order to help a lot of people. And the same thing is true for PTAs. You have to have a broad skill set to help people. It's just, unfortunately, your scope is limited only to the extent that your PT is capable. So that makes it very challenging. And to follow up with Yanni's question, hi Pamela. Yanni asked, PTA utilization in the New World Order of PT. Ooh, I like that. And I think it's very much the same thing as before, is you have to, if your PTA is not on the same page as you, it behooves you and is your responsibility to get them on the same page as you. And I think it takes a receptive PTA. You need someone who's willing to learn and be eager. And if there's certain things that you like with your patients, well, you better get on the same page as that PTA and teach them those things. So, I mean, I work with a PTA right now, and I have definitely shown him a lot of the things that I want done with people. We go over some of the home exercise program, and I also try to do whatever I can to give my PTA a little bit of autonomy, because I just don't want to say, hey, I need you to do this, and this, and this, because there's certain things that he doesn't have in his skill set that I do, and vice versa. And so I will give him more guidelines, and I'll say, hey, look, I need you to review these two home HEP movements that I gave my guy or my gal. And this person, we need to start driving a hip internal rotation range of motion, as well as split stance based strength activities. Do your thing. And I let him do my thing. And I let him do his thing. And then along the way, as I bring a PTA up to speed with the things that I like to do, and we start to develop rapport and all that, and then maybe I show him some things, or we talk through clients, and it's it becomes a very organic process. So you just have to be a mentor. You have to be a communicator with these people. You have to be rapport, and most importantly, you have to be their friend. And if you can build that relationship, build that trust, a lot of times you can develop a good relationship between the two of you, and ultimately can keep the continuum of care from the handoff from the PT to the PTA as smooth as possible. So PTAs, be aggressive, be good at what you do. PTs, be humble, be a teacher, and be willing to help build that relationship so you are both on the same page. Because it's when you're not on the same page, that's when problems ensue. So John Murray 64 and Yanni Poo, good questions. Next question comes from my boy B, Brad. Brad is a guy who I worked with back when I was in Illinois. He's also a St. Ambrose University grad, and he's good people. And I figured, you know what, Brad? Excuse me, B. I'll answer your question. Cues/ideas for infrasternal angle reset and breathing for a patient with positive tests for right BC, right TMCC. So basically what that means is there's certain limitations in the thorax and neck that implicate this particular pattern. I would assume that this person has limited IR on the right, possibly limited ER on the left, limited horizontal abduction. We'll just go with those for right now. And then neck, can't turn all the way to the left, can't side bend to the right. And, lots of fusions. So those tests limited, and a T2 through S1 and a right SI joint fusion due to severe scoliosis and presents for migraine/headache. We call that one a humdinger where I come from. That's a good one, Brad. It's a really good one, man. I feel for you, and I feel for this patient, because that is tough when you have the entire spine fused, pretty much, besides the cervical. Well, yeah, besides the cervical and a little bit of the sacrum. And what I would say to you is that there's still a lot of other joints that you can restore variability at, even though the spine doesn't move. And not only that, but there's other joints that aren't necessarily fused that can move, and that would be creating mobility in the rib cage. Even though there's a little bit of spinal movement with that, doesn't mean you can't get ribs to move and pump and fill air as well. So I think there's still a lot of things that you can do for this person. And I would assume, I can't make the assumption. I was going to assume that this person was a narrow infrasternal angle, but I can't make that assumption because he did not specifically say that. So for this person, what you have to do is really the same thing that you would do with everyone else. It's establish variability, power, capacity. If we're talking headaches, well, this person still has neck range of motion. So what I would encourage you to do, Brad, is make certain that you normalize the infrasternal angle to the best of your capabilities. Now, if the person has a scoliosis, it's not going to be perfect, period. And I question, too, after having a discussion with Daddy-O Pops, Bill Hartman, if we need to strive for perfect symmetrical. Because, I mean, think about it, guys. We are asymmetrical. We have asymmetry due to organ anatomy. Do we really need a symmetrical infrasternal angle? I don't know. I've had some people where I've left them asymmetrical, but all their other corresponding tests were fine, and like they're cool and they're pain-free. Cool, man. Just move on to the next steps. Move on to power, move on to capacity. So for this person, you gotta do whatever you can to get the joints moving that aren't fused. And so first off, do the best you can with the infrasternal angle. If they're narrow, prolonged exhales, get them in quadruped, all types of jazz like that. Because if we can get the rib cage moving, get air flow in and out, you at least get some motion. And hey, who knows, man? Maybe stuff T1 above will get to chill a little bit because you are getting some of the other muscles surrounding the rib cage a bit more active. Something to consider. So I would go with that first and foremost. If the right SI joint is fused, and you figure you're probably going to have a hard time getting external rotation-based stuff on the right side, I would think, because even though the innominates don't move much, anytime I'm doing external rotation, doing this maneuver, like a little bit of external rotation of the innominate on that right side, might be problematic, because even though there's not much SI joint movement, there still is a little to some degree. But in terms of lower body stuff, do the best you can. See what kind of movement you can get out of the left side. Maybe that induces enough lower extremity variability that this person can get a little bit of relief. And in terms of some of the upper body stuff, in terms of like head up stuff, until you've maximized everything here down, stay away. Or maybe you do some of your local inputs until you gotta go there. So whether that's some of the other good stuff that's decently evidence-based for headaches, your mobilizations, your manipulations, whatever you got, I don't care. It doesn't really matter what input you choose, just whatever helps the patient. One thing I would probably look at with this person is if you've done the best you can here and you're not seeming to get anywhere, maybe start looking at some jaw stuff. See if you can get some motion there. If they're now, I got to think about this. Pat Davidson, when I took his class, said this really eloquently. For wide infrasternal angles, we typically go arms overhead and get a forceful exhale. Well, if you have someone with that and palate kind of matches, so it's like maybe a higher palate of some sort, you could do the same thing, only this time you do like a tongue on the roof of the mouth. Like tongue on the roof of the mouth is analogous to arms overhead. So you do something like that and create a little bit of jaw movement. Maybe treating some of this can have an impact on the migraines and the headaches. It's at least something to look at. You don't necessarily do that as much with someone who is a narrow, because just think about it, like if I do arms overhead, that increases the A to P dimensions of the rib cage or the mouth, and I don't necessarily think you're going to do tongue forward, because then you're influencing a tongue thrust, but maybe you want to do something a little bit different upstairs with the neck. And I always look at this book. You guys probably want to check this one out. Trigger Points of Muscle Change and Osteopathy. I'm going to link it in the show notes. Let me just write that down. TP book. We need Bill. And we need my boy P.H. Davidson. But I can't technically show you guys this picture because of, like getting sued and stuff like that, I think. But on page 49. And I'll even write that down if you guys decide to buy the book, because I really like this book. It's got some really cool diagrams. If I have someone who is more of a narrow, what you're going to see is more cranial flexion and extension of the occiput. And so what they're going to do is have kind of this sort of posture, right? So cervical flexion, OA extension. I want to do things to try to reverse that. What do? Just drive a little bit of OA flexion, maybe something eyes down, keeping the jaw kind of relaxed and chill. Don't necessarily do tongue on the roof of the mouth. Maybe something like a fat tongue is probably warranted, where you're trying to spread the palate apart, because a lot of times they'll have a narrow palate and you want to get that to go. Something to consider. I'll think about reading that to you, Dana. That's something I would look at. Whereas if they're more this, where they have like a cranial extension, OA flexion, cervical extension, kind of a military posture, you're doing things to try to drive OA extension along with the tongue on the roof of the mouth. So you think about tongue on the mouth, jaw forward, OA extension, see what you get. Those would be things that I would look at, Brad, and just see if you can get a change on there. So to summarize with this patient, do the best you can from here down, and try to drive as much as humanly possible. Spend a lot of time trying to restore the infrasternal angle to the best of your capabilities, or at least go through that thought process. And even if you're not getting changes at the angle itself, secondary to the fusion, you may still get some changes in some of your other tests, and that's okay. Then you know you're heading on the right track. Once you've exhausted that, then start going upstairs with someone who is more of a wide person, tongue on the roof of the mouth, drive OA extension. If they're more narrow, think fat tongue, OA flexion. See what you get. Good question, Brad. Last one comes from the legend himself, the man. If it weren't for this guy, I wouldn't probably be doing these. Alan Tucker. Alan asks, if you feel like it, maybe talk about your daily routine, morning, bed, writing, etc. How did this develop? Well, you know what, Alan? I do feel like it. So let's dive into some routines. I think Alan kind of wanted to ask this because we grabbed dinner when I was in San Francisco area a little bit ago. And he's always like, Zach, getting stuff done kind of stuff. And that's kind of funny. And I think really what led to routines being developed, there were four or five books that I read that really kind of flipped a switch for me. And this was after I got fired from Memphis. And those books were 4-Hour Workweek. That was big for me for routines. Extreme Ownership, that one is probably one of the most impactful books I've ever read in my life. So you probably should get that one. The Subtle Art of Not Giving Up, that one's really good. And The Obstacle is the Way and Ego is the Enemy. Those are my four. And I read those, and just it really kind of inspired me to develop as many processes as I could, as humanly possible, to try and reach my goals and get over the I won't say devastation, but the rough time that I was going through. And because I was able to instill those routines, instill those habits, they all just kind of fed into one another, and here I am. And I think a lot of it too started with some of the fat loss that I was initially going through, because I dropped about, from April to August, I dropped like 30 pounds. And that unto itself led to a lot of routines, because I had to be militant in order to do that. So it just, even having just that as a foundational piece led to a lot of other routines develop. So here's kind of what my current routine looks like. And let me preface this, guys, even though my routines are pretty good for the most part, I'm always kind of tweaking little things. And I mean, a little thing could be, do I make my bed as soon as I get out of bed, or do I go do a few other things and then go make my bed? And these aren't perfect by any means. I still struggle with getting a lot of things done. I sometimes get distracted. Sometimes I'm on the internet way too late and I don't read. I'm not perfect. And but that doesn't mean I'm not trying to get damn near close to perfect, so I can live the life I want to live and get things done the way I want to get them done. So my routines. Let's start the morning. So in the morning, and Amanda, I will answer your question. Amanda's got a question on YouTube, but let's go over the routines first. Hang on, answer your question. Hang on. So, morning routine. This is non-weekend, but I have 2 alarms. I have my phone, and then I have this guy. Product placement. I have a Philips light alarm, and I like that because it slowly illuminates the room and wakes me up, and then I'm all smiley and all that. But I set my alarm for 6 a.m. every morning, and I get up. I don't hit snooze. I get up as soon as possible. And what really helps me is I have one of my favorite songs on there, which is by one of my favorite groups, the Foreign Exchange, which, if y'all don't know, the Foreign Exchange is, fam, come on. Fonte, my boy, and we got Nicolay on the ones and twos. Really good album. The song is Take Off the Blues, and it's kind of like, you know, it kind of gets you up and going. So like I'm kind of like dancing a little bit before I get out of bed. So I get out of bed, and the first thing I do is I make my bed. And I make my bed. Why? Because that one talk, you know, first thing you do, you make your bed, you get a good accomplishment out of the way. That's my first accomplishment. So I do that, make my bed. Then it's go to the bathroom and do my business. So once business is taken care of, I go right back in here. There's the scale. I weigh myself. I also measure my waist to make sure I'm not getting fat. And I adjust my food accordingly. Right now I'm kind of in like another mini cut sort of phase, so I'm trying to lean out over the next month. We'll see how that goes. So I'm there. Then what I do immediately after that is, I did that. I take one of my supplements that Dave Rasco has me doing, because I have like a crap ton of supplements that he's putting me through. He's putting me through like some functional medicine type stuff, which we'll talk about at some point. But I go ahead and take supplement number 1. Then I come back in here, and then I meditate for 10 minutes. And actually, Amanda, you'll appreciate this. I'm playing with working on improving my ability to tolerate carbon dioxide. And in the Oxygen Advantage, there's this test called the Bolt test. And basically what the Bolt test is you take a breath of air in through your nose, you exhale through your nose. And Amanda, yes, he does recommend in and out through the nose while exercising. But you get air out through your nose, then you plug your nose, you see how long you can hold your breath before you get the first signs and symptoms of air hunger. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm pretty, I've been doing this breathing thing for a hot minute. I'm in decent shape. Let's see how I do. So I take my breath of air in, I get it out, and I plug. And I'm looking at the timer waiting, and all of a sudden I get this overwhelming urge to breathe. I'm like, ugh. And I make this funky noise with my nose, and it wasn't good. And I believe I hit about 9 or 10 seconds on my first go around. Ideally, you want to shoot for about 20 to 30. And so I'm like, well, crap, I suck at this. We need to get better. And so after I've taken supplement number 1, I sit right here. I turn my light on, the Philips light, and I also got my Verilux Happy Light that I use. And I blast light on me, and I meditate for 10 minutes. And it's just seriously working on holding my exhales a little bit longer and trying to build up carbon dioxide tolerance while being mindful of that. And I tried to play with meditating at various times of the day, because some of the stuff that I've been reading as of late shows that morning is like probably your best time to get some work done. So I was like, oh, I could use that 10 minutes to do some work. And what that resulted in was me never meditating. So I have to get it done there because I feel good afterwards. And typically it improves my Bolt score. Like today, fam hit 20 seconds. Deal with it. So I meditate. Then I'm about due for supplement number 2. So I take my next supplement that Dave has me on. Then I change my clothes, get ready. Actually, no, I wash my face. Then I go change my clothes. Then I go out into the kitchen, and it is at that point in time that I start working on whatever is the most important project of the day. And today, that was Monday's blog. So I got pretty much all of Monday's blog done in the morning. So you figure that's by about 6:40. So really like 6:30 to 6:40 to about 7:10. That's when I get a bulk of my writing done. Now, the biggest productivity game changer for me during this morning is keeping my phone on airplane mode. Because as soon as I flick that open and I get it off of airplane mode, I'm bombarded with texts, messages, emails, and it just is, without fail, as soon as I flick that thing open, even if it's just one text, I'm immediately just going to answer that. And I'm not getting the things done that are necessary for me to get done. So putting the phone on airplane mode has been an absolute game changer for me. And I want to be able to do that a bit more. But sometimes I like talking to certain people, and sometimes I just I need to procrastinate things. And so I haven't been as good about that. And Adil, 100%, that's why I don't text you back. So that's my morning. And typically the morning is when I get all the writing done. So I do that, and then about 7:10, 7:15, I start breakfast. I don't cook my breakfast in the morning. Typically, I've cooked all my food the night before, and it's just a matter of reheating. So I eat from about 7:15 till about 7:45, and then I rushingly brush my teeth and try to get to work, which starts at 8. And so that's kind of my morning. It's very, very regimented. I've been pretty dialed in on it. I would like to get to the point where I don't have to rush to work every morning, but I don't want to get up earlier to do that, because one thing I was playing with earlier in the year was my sleep routine. Like for a while, I was getting up at 5 a.m., and ideally I would go to bed at 8, but I just could never fall asleep, and then I'd end up falling asleep at 11 and then being sleep deprived. That's not fun. So I bumped it to 6, and now I go to bed at like 9, 9:30, 10, 10:30, somewhere around there. Really depends on the day. So, yeah, I got to figure out, I got to tweak the morning a little bit so I'm not always running behind, but it's working pretty good so far, and I'm getting things done. So that's my morning. Then I work from about 8 to 12 at the clinic, seeing patients, trying to change lives and all that jazz. And then I have lunch, and my schedule is pretty cool now. It wasn't always this way. This is just kind of a recent phenomenon. But I have 12 to 3:30 off, which is really, really cool. But it's also been problematic because this is like a new thing, and it takes me a while to establish a set routine here. And so typically what I do, and what I played with this today, and I think this is what it's going to be, is as soon as I get home, I change into my training clothes, and then I hit the gym and go train. So I train around this time because typically, during the 12, 1, 2, It's probably when we're our least productive because that's when we're supposed to be doing the siesta and all that jazz. So what do? I get after it. So I went and worked out today, and I filmed some stuff at the gym for Monday's post. And then I came back, and then I ate lunch. And I tell you what, like, I got so much done in that time period, and it didn't take me that long. It's probably about an hour and a half. That's pretty much what I do, and then the rest of the morning is still to be continued. Sometimes I'm talking to clients, sometimes I'm talking to friends, sometimes I'm napping. I mean, it really, really depends. I have a little bit of flexibility in that regard. What I'd like to do is make that portion another work portion, but it's just being consistent with it. So stay tuned. I will continue to develop that routine. But I do that until about 3:30. Then I go back to work from 3:30 to 6. And then I come home and I eat dinner. And once I've finished dinner, then I'm either working with a client online, or I'm back to doing some work on my website, or I'm looking up some stuff on the internet, so either some research or reading, or I read. Those are really the only three options. Or sometimes maybe I'm talking to a friend who I haven't talked to in a hot minute. So that's typically what my evening looks like. That goes on until about, we'll say 8:30, and then it's wind down time. So about 8 p.m. I do this. This is signifying, hey Zach, you ought to wind down. But I put these bad boys on. And actually, they're not these bad boys, but I have another pair of bad boys. But my other bad boys are not, I don't know where they're at. So I do some blue blockers. So that way I'm not, hit on by all this light, like this crap up here. And also, another thing that I do to signify that, hey, you got to start going to bed, I turn that one off. And then I got one of these bad boys, Himalayan Salt Rock. I turn that on so that way the light is not as bright. That helps me wind down. About 8:30, I do my best to shut down screens. Not always good, but most of the time I am. I'm also, around this time, I might be doing some cooking, some meal prep for the following day. It really depends. Sometimes I do it then. Sometimes I do it while I'm eating lunch. It just depends on how much food I have and when I run out of food. So I do that. Then by about 9, I'm about ready to start wrapping it up with whatever I'm doing, whether that's shutting off my computer or whether I just say it's time to start reading or time to wind down to bed. I then walk into my room, go ahead and lie down. Sometimes I just pass out instantaneously. Sometimes I read for a little bit, something that's not necessarily work related, but also something that's kind of, intriguing. And then I go to bed between 9 and 10:30. It really depends. Like tonight, probably going to be a little bit later night because I got to get the blog ready for tomorrow. But that is really my routines. So writing and most of the work's done in the morning. Learning is done most of the time at night. And the learning doesn't even have to be reading. And this is something I've just been thinking about a little bit lately because Bill has been doing a lot of thought experiments as of late. And I had this very, very great quote from Eric Otter when I lived and worked with him. And he said some people just don't take time to think. And doing that has been incredibly powerful and incredibly good learning experience. Like sometimes I will just think about either a patient or a concept or something and just try to wrap my mind through that. And I found that that's immensely helpful at building clarity. And I think that's equally as good a learning experience as reading. I don't think we spend enough time reflecting. And I think that's something that I need to build more into my routines, is spending some time for reflection on what I'm doing for the day or a particular concept. And Amari, Bill is my mentor, Bill Hartman. You want to check him out at billhartman.net. I'll link him in the show notes. But I think it's something that's vastly underrated and underutilized as a learning tool. So spend some time reflecting. But Alan, that was a great question. That's my routine. And I also think that that's probably a good stopping point for tonight. I want to thank all of you beautiful, sexy, outstanding people for tuning in. And I'm sure you're probably wondering, where can I find out more about you, Zach? Well, I'm glad you asked. First off, go to zachcouples.com. While you're there, go to the right, sign up for the newsletter. You'll get a lot of cool stuff. You'll get almost 3 hours worth of talks. You're going to get almost 50 pages of notes regarding the talks. You're going to get a free acute to chronic workload calculator. And you're going to get weekend learning goodies every Friday. You'll want to definitely subscribe to the newsletter. And guess what? When Big Z releases some products, you know who's beginning to hook up? Newsletter subscribers. Sign up, please. Once you've done that, go to the online services page. I offer 3 services: mentoring, movement consultations, and training. Let's dive into each, shall we? First off, movement consultations. Are you tight? Do you feel like, I got some boo-boos and I had some people look at it and no one can kind of figure it out, or maybe I want a fresh set of eyes, or maybe I'm not moving as well as I'd like to. Maybe I can't squat as deep as I want to. Maybe your deadlift ain't doing so hot. Hit me up for a movement consultation. We'll look at all of your movement potential and capabilities and find out what you can't do. Make you do that. Find out what you do too much of. Make you do less of that and get you on the right track. Hit me up for a movement consultation. Once you've done that, then you probably want to be mentoring with me. What's that look like? Well, if you've got some problems either in the clinic or in the training realm, I can help you out. For example, with some of my mentees that I have now, we talk about interaction. We talk about rib cage. We talk about getting buy-in with clients. We run through cases because, hey, I want to do this, this, and this with my patients or my clients. I can help you out. Check me out for the mentorship program. Then, you want the gun show. You want to drop some fat, which I'm pretty good at. You want to get back after it post-rehab. Hit me up for fitness training. I will write you a program. We'll talk week to week. We'll adjust. We'll get you to your goals. We'll help you get better. Hit me up for that. Once you've done that, I want you to go to iTunes. And you can subscribe and get more of these debriefs, just audio version only. Why do you want audio version? I don't know. Maybe you like podcasting. Maybe you're one of my ex-girlfriends and can't stay on the side of me. Go to iTunes, subscribe, get the audio version of these debriefs, because there's, last I checked, 35 other ones you could listen to if you're a newbie. Check it out there. Then once you've done that, go to facebook.com/ZCouples. Hit me up on that. I post things you want to see. Once you've done that, go to Twitter. Handle is @ZCouples. Sometimes I get angry and I post something that I want to rant about. Or maybe I want advices from you. Or maybe you want advices from me. Or maybe you got questions on the debrief and you want to ask me on any of these things. Check me out on Twitter. Then, of course, once you've done that, you got to hit up that Instagram, baby. Instagram is Zach, Z-A-C, Couples, C-U-P-P-L-E-S. Joe, what's poppin', big dog? Hit me up on Instagram. I post quotes. Post pictures of hiking, and I do other types of stuff on there too that's kind of related to all this stuff. You definitely want to hit me up on Instagram. Last but not least, go to YouTube. Just search Zach Couples. You'll find me, and you'll find a lot of videos of exercises that I don't really post anywhere else. Maybe like, I did this with a client. Hey, you want to give it a shot? You should. Check me out on YouTube. Otherwise, I hope you beautiful, sexy, outstanding people have a fantabulous Wednesday, an outstanding rest of your week. Until I see you next week. Keep it real, but not to the extent where things go wrong. Stay hungry, stay learning, stay moving. I'll see you next time. Deuces.